Oh, I forgot she didn't record. Now it could be historic. It could be historic how bad this is going to go. So let me save for
Doesn't even
prosperity.
sound hopeful.
Oh, I'm good with the podcast. It's the intro part.
Okay. Well, we'll work it out.
All right. So I would like to welcome everyone to the premiere episode of the Read Write Books podcast. I'm Brian Wilson. I'm joined by my co-host, my partner, Natasha K. I'm gonna need you to say something.
Hi.
It's a talking thing.
It's talking thing. It's
It's not
talking.
a wavy thing. It's a talk.
Well, I'll talk and wave. Hi.
All right. Anything you want to say?
Nope. That was great. I mean, a little bit more energy next time. I'm kidding.
A little bit. Let me get all hyped up on sugar. Let's do this.
Right. So the book.
Right. Wait. Before we get into the book, we should give a little
Oh, like a
background on
background.
how we read books.
Yeah. So you want to lead in or you want me to?
Uh, I can lead. So
Okay.
that. Uh, I don't want to say I don't enjoy books because I do, but I think I enjoy words more. Like I'm a word person more than a book person. And my problem is when I read books, I tend to have my own way or my own thoughts on how they should go. So I kind of lose interest at certain points in books, and then it's kind of hard to get back into them. Like if I'm at a certain point, like the middle of a book, and something happens that I'm not fond of, I don't necessarily stop reading the book, but I kind of become disinterested in what's going to happen. You got to really hook me for me to be where I can't change the book, but still finish the book. I got to be really invested in it. So I guess the point or my my interest in this podcast is that if I can't change a book, I'd at least get my thoughts on what I would do to make it more interesting to me. I guess yeah,
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm similarly the same way. I know me and you, Brian, we go back and forth on books that we do read together. And it's, just like you, if I'm disinterested early on, even more recently, I try to give it at least an hour or so before I either it's a go or no. But then, like you said, being able to go back into it and say, okay, I think I may see where this is going, but we could have possibly, went a little different route to it.
right,
But also understanding and respecting that we are not the authors of these books. It's just, what we would like to have seen versus, the outcomes of the book, maybe, in our mind sequels of the book or how
right,
they can carry on and things
right,
like that. Um, but sometimes I know our conversations get really interesting, and we definitely do have to remind ourselves that the authors wrote these books a certain way for specific reasons,
right,
and where we're coming from is obviously not from what months, years of trying to put together a manuscript. We're coming from 6 to 8 to 12 hours of listening to a book or reading a book, and just giving our perspective, honestly.
right,
Um, so I think that's, I feel like this is where um, we both carry different twist to what we would like to see in books. So I think that's really going to be the significance of the podcast also. I feel like, Brian and I, we do a lot of things together before. Initially, it was writing. He actually got me into initially starting my blog oh my gosh, I don't even remember how many years ago, way too many. It's several,
it was
maybe
10.
10 years ago.
No,
Wow.
it was 2010.
Yeah, I was gonna say more like
Yeah,
20 years.
it was
Yeah,
it was 2010.
yeah, it's been a while. And not doing as much writing these days, just from being busy in life, taking a different direction. But we definitely shared some common interest in the writing aspect of it. But then also, as you know, not being able to kind of hunker down and do a lot of the writing. I think Brian still does. But I just, you know, with business and things like that, it's a little bit harder. So I've really tailored myself towards trying to have time to read or listen to books, which tends to be, you know, kind of a safe haven and a zen spot for me.
Right.
So I'm really interested to see where this goes. I mean, I definitely could tell you that we have different taste of books. Um, I've,
Definitely.
I've dragged him into some horrible books.
I
Um,
won't mention any names just yet.
just yet. There you'll find some
We,
that
we
have
will.
been on the, you know, a lot of these really high interest book clubs that I don't even know how they made it there. But again, different people have different interests, and we even get to a point of going back through Goodreads and seeing, you know, what those reviews look like. I think we both kind of tailored ourselves to not reading those reviews because, again, it's based on perspective of the readers. And that's, again, this is kind of how we're going to tailor this podcast a little bit. So
We're
we
like,
may end up being those Goodreads reviewers just in podcast form.
right.
But
I was literally about to say that. That's what we're doing right now. We good read podcast
yeah,
reviews. There we go. That's what we doing.
yep. So
Fix that better.
better, hopefully
Right.
better,
Not
no
hopefully.
doubt better. So the twist on the logoing and how coming up with the name of the podcast, I tend to keep that creative piece to Brian. Um, very creative. He's really designed almost all of my logos, from my blog to some of my business stuff, to this. So that creative function is all him all the time.
Should
So
I have a picture of it or something? Like I should be showing something that
I
says,
feel like
look,
you should. I feel like you should, but we just literally talked about this as far as what we wanted it to look like and things like
right.
that. So it may take
I'll
a
work.
little bit of time.
Yeah, I'll work on something.
And the other thing is, you know, when he says he's going to work with it, he's really probably going to just draw it and sketch it out
Um,
himself, which
that's
makes
perfect.
it that much more creative. So, so
No,
first book,
first book. First book is The Second Stranger by Martin Griffin.
yeah,
It's a book,
it's a book. Also narrated by Tamsin Kennard.
right?
Um, and I listened to it. I think you listened to it also.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know that we'll get to a point where we'll have time to actually physically read a book. So a lot of these will be audiobooks that we're listening to.
right.
Um, so yeah, so first impressions before we get into the thick of it.
Like an overview of my impression
I would
or what I
say
thought before I got into it.
what you thought before you got into it.
Natty dragged me into another book. She played me. She she manipulated me into my reading this book because I was like, whatever. Natty's reading another book. Cool, whatever. Oh, you not reading it? You should get it from Libby. Get it. Oh, wait, what? You got it? Oh, yeah, you should read it now. Yeah, it was a lot of that. So I guess my overview of me before I got into the book was, wow, I just got played.
All
But
the
but I mean, like I never get mad about having to read the book. I enjoy the things we do together, and reading books together is like it's an enjoyable experience. So it was fine. I was cool, and the synopsis of it was pretty. It was interesting. It got me
it pulled you in,
willing
didn't
to read it. Yeah, I was willing to read. Because like I said, when we go into books with thoughts of how they might go potentially, I'm always intrigued on how it differs from what I think it's going to be.
Right.
So I was drawn into that, and before I started reading this book, because I wanted to know, like, it's so many different ways it could go, this could go just based off of the title. Like, it could have been a whole bunch of other stuff. And I don't even think before I started reading that I read the plot or anything. I was just
Plot.
like, I was just okay, that's cool. Sounded all right. So let me read it because I kind of got sucked into it.
Yeah, I think the plot did pull me in too, and I was thinking, oh, it couldn't be that bad. I feel like there's this one book that it can't be this bad, and it was actually that bad. So I think I started out with this particular book like this is kind of interesting. It sounds interesting. I think I can, see what this is about. But yeah, and I think like it did suck me in, but then it real quick, it was kind of like, I don't know. And sometimes that happens. Um, but then there's also this part where, you're too far gone and you just gotta see where it goes and what's 6 more hours of an 8-hour book once you're 2 hours in.
That's all
So
bad.
it's all
That's
bad.
all bad. You got 3/4 of the book to go. You like, should I keep going?
Right. Yeah, you're making life decisions
Yeah,
and then you just hope that, you can overcome what this is about to be. And then it leads to conversations like this.
right.
And probably one that of where we'll be probably trying to rewrite this book
Oh,
versus
we definitely be trying to
how
read it.
it was supposed to turn out.
Right.
So let's get into Remy.
Okay.
What do you think about her character?
I thought she was interesting, like,
Okay.
but I didn't. I guess I didn't feel like she was any different from any other like damsel in distress, like running away from a problem kind of character. So I didn't identify with her,
Okay.
but I understood the character. I was like, okay, well, she's got stuff going on and she's doing a lot of stuff, planning or plotting her way out of a situation. So I was like, okay, I get that. But I didn't know how much different she was from any other character from any other book. I was just like, okay, this is the main person. This
Right.
is who I'm supposed to be, empathizing with. So she was fine. It was all right.
Yeah, I
It
agree. I mean, she wasn't too profound of a character.
was just
She was a main character, but she wasn't the main interest in the book, I think.
right,
And I think that was where it started falling apart for me, was that there was a lot of focus on her, but it really wasn't focused on her, and it was a
right.
little disjointed a little.
It's
Um,
weird when you the main character, but it's not enough to make people care about you. Like you there, but everybody else seems more important.
More important.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
That's that's weird. Like
I
the main
agree.
character should be person like, oh, the main focus. Like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. Or every other thing revolves around this person. And
Yeah.
it to a point it does, but you never care enough about her to be like, oh, she's like the main person. Like
What's
she
gonna
is
happen
the
with
person.
her?
Right. I was just like, okay, she trying to get away. Now who are all these other more interesting people
Right.
to be like, okay, okay.
Because I will say it did happen really fast. Like the
It did.
things were happening so fast, and it kind of you were in catch up mode before you really got to walking with it, and it was quick but slow at the same time. So
Mm,
I don't know if that makes sense, but it was it was a little awkward at first for me because then I had to really kind of I think I even found myself going back and rewinding a little bit to just make sure I didn't miss something because it
right.
just seemed like it happened things were happening way too fast. Um but yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't dislike her, but it was just not it wasn't enough, I think.
Right.
I
Right.
feel like her character came together more at the end versus the beginning,
Right.
you know. Probably would have did that a little different. But so I guess for things to make sense, I guess, should we do an overview of a quick overview of the book so we can kind of understand what these characters are as we talk about them. Even though Remy is the main, not so main character, it's just this one's gonna be an awkward one. And
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, she didn't. She was the main character, but she didn't become the main character till way later on in the book. Like,
right,
well, she didn't become a character you actually was like cared about until way later in the book, like where you were actually invested in what she was trying to do. That
yeah,
didn't happen right away. Like it took a long time for you to be like, oh, I should care about her, or and I understand her motivations behind what she was doing.
right.
It took it took a long time,
It took a
and
very long time.
and in that time, that's when people are deciding whether or not they want to continue on with the book.
Yeah, I
So
think they would have lost a lot of people in trying to get there. If they're like me and trying to, if their window of time to stop is earlier, they would have hung it up real
yeah,
fast.
they would, yeah,
And that's, I
definitely
mean, I don't know if that's unfortunate, but I think there were definitely highlights in the book that I liked. But again, first off, I don't know that it was enough.
right.
Um, so yeah, yeah. So
I'll let I'll let you go with the overview, though.
so I don't know if I could talk about the overview because again, it's a lot. It's a lot. So the book is based in Scotland, right?
Yes,
So it's based in Scotland. Remy is the main character, but not so main character of this book. And we'll tell you why later. But she's obviously preparing, right? She's preparing to leave. But then later on in the story, it breaks down the why behind she's leaving. But she's met with some interesting things that are happening in the midst of her being at work at this tucked away, um, what is it, mountain resort in Scotland. I will say this, the author did a beautiful job of describing this scenery and the atmosphere and the weather and things like that, but I wish it kind of that part was beautiful. It
right,
drew you in and made you want to like really be there, because
right,
that was very, very detailed. Um, but in the midst of her preparing to get to this point, um of where she's trying to go, I guess we'll say for now, um lots of things start to happen. um she's met with the first stranger. And then there's lots of twists and turns, and then she's met with obviously the second stranger, but then there's also a couple of other characters sprinkled in the midst of it, which make it a little bit more interesting. But as things go on, you have, it walks the path of her life, it walks the path of her brother's life, and all of these other things and how they kind of commingle together, to forge a story to where she's trying to go and why. I don't
right,
know if that makes sense. I mean, because it seems like the synopsis of the book is very small, but they made it so big.
right.
So I
It's
don't,
like, what can you cram into 50 words? And
yeah,
then once you got those 50 words out there, you
make
need
it
to
eight
add a
hours.
whole bunch of story next. You need more. You got 50 words to describe it, but I need like 1,000 other words to like fill it in.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
there was a lot of fill in,
A
and
lot.
there was good fill in, but
Oh,
not great fill in too. So Um, and so I guess breaking it down, Remy, how old do you think she is? I feel like maybe she's in maybe her late 20s, or no, she's got to be
I
like
think
in
it's
her
that
mid 30s.
they said it was, they said she was in her mid 30s. Like, I think he said like 35, somewhere
Okay,
around there.
that makes
It
sense.
was around.
Okay, that makes sense. So Remy's in her mid 30s, and she has a brother that he's got to be in his 20s at this point. because it walks this path of their life as brother and sister, and how, what their relationship is like and things like that. And even this piece kind of, I don't know, it was odd. Um, Although I love their relationship at times, it was almost kind of like a motherly relationship that she had towards him. It was just very awkward still too, and because there was just pieces missing for me. But she was definitely, older big sister trying to keep baby brother out of problems and drama. Um, and again, all the twists and turns that happen, but these twists and turns, they didn't happen in the beginning. They just kind of were sprinkled out in the middle, and you just left wondering, well, how did this happen versus that happen? And you still really just didn't know what the hell was going on until you're in the middle of the book.
Right. I'd argue that was the biggest misstep, I guess, is that all these things got sprinkled in between the beginning and essentially the middle, which is where I'd say where it actually I can't even say it took off, because I think I like the beginning part more than the ending part. And I don't even
Yeah.
know that I love the beginning part. But all the things that were sprinkled in, it was almost like exposition. You throw filler out, like throw all these things out there to tie them up later on in the story.
Yeah.
So it just seemed like it took forever to get to the point to where all the things started making sense.
Yeah.
Like in an 8 hour book, it was before you figured out what was going on between the two strangers. And an
Hmm.
8 hour book, I think it was like 5.5 hours before you figured out what was going on. Like who was who.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
That's accurate.
that it was I looked. It was like I'm looking at the thing like I've been listening to this for 5.5 hours and I just found out what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the first stranger.
Okay.
What what are your thoughts on the first stranger? PC games.
I think I think my biggest positive of the book is that, like I say, in those 5.5 hours, I literally did not know who was who. Like I
Right.
couldn't figure. I'm like, this dude could be lying. This dude could be lying. I don't know. And I think that is the reason I finished the book. Is how I got through the book, because for 5.5 hours in my creative mind, where I'm trying to figure out where is this going, because I'm like, he could be lying. He could be lying. They both could be lying. She could be crazy. I don't know.
Right.
That was
Right.
the biggest positive, because it sucked me in to be like, yo, I need to know. Like I can't stop until I know what's going on.
And it made you feel crazy because just when you thought you knew, something else
It,
happened.
somebody
Something
might
else
be
happened.
lying. Like what's going on?
Yeah.
To me was the biggest positive. So what did I think of the first guy? I thought he could have been legit,
Yeah.
but I thought the second dude could have been legit too. I didn't
True.
know.
True. So I guess let's go into how we came to the strangers, right?
Mhm.
Um Middle of the storm, blizzard, I think it was. Then there was an accident, a car accident, and within this accident there were police officers transporting a prisoner.
Right.
Um One of the officers escaped. The prisoner escaped. One was injured. Lots of things going on.
It was a lot of stuff.
Lots of messes. I think, heck, by the time it was all said and done, there was what, three officers and a prisoner? Did I count right?
It was a lady in the
No,
car
four officers and a
in the
prisoner.
transport.
Yep.
One cop, two cop. I think it was another, but I think it was another cop. It was a lot of people
There was a
who
lot of random people.
it
And they
was
didn't
they were
even
there.
go into it. It was just kind of like, oh, this person, they seen him in the snow and he was dead. And it was
Right.
just, it was kind of walked over really fast. Yeah. So it boils down to the prisoner's loose. You have a police officer that was injured as well.
Right.
That was trying to, I guess, find the prisoner that was loose. Then somehow we find out that there was another officer that was injured that was still left in a vehicle.
Right.
And then I don't even know how, it's very odd to me, the timing. You don't quite know how much time has passed in the midst of all of these things going on. Because
Right.
at some point it's almost kind of like maybe it's a couple of hours, but then in my mind it just seemed like it was too long, and then it was maybe overnight.
Right. Well, after the first uh police officer came to knock on their door, there was a whole lot of interaction between him and her. Like all this stuff, like come do this, come show me where this is, come do this. There was a lot going on before the second dude showed up. Like a
Right.
lot between her and the, I don't want to say the the guy with the, I don't, because if I say it then I'm spoiling. But
Right.
the first guy at the bar
Yeah.
who was there, okay,
Right.
between her and him, them not being able to find the other lady,
Right. The other guest.
right? And then her and the cop, a lot was going on between those people where they were questioning each other. He's got to know, the cops got to know who the people are. He's got to know what the rooms look like. There's a lot going on
Yeah.
before the second stranger even showed up. So was it an hour? Was it 2 hours? It's a lot of time to be stuck out in the snow, like dying
Yeah.
essentially. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a lot.
Well, then you also kind of wonder that, with the other guests being missing, the lady, how much time is too much time for them to not even be looking for her?
Right.
So it was odd. But then also would she have had to go through the same hoops that the strangers had to go through to get back into the hotel? Because obviously she wasn't inside. So how was
Right.
she even going to gain access when she came back? So again, there was just tons of questions that were just running through my mind that I couldn't answer, and it was just a little frustrating. So, so what did you think about um Cameron as the story just kind of bounces back and forth, and because they did have a really wild way of sprinkling that in. She was having weird flashbacks within awkward moments.
I feel like everything about her brother was to tie into the end. Like, well, I don't know if you could have written a story without her brother because essentially you needed her brother for the guy at the bar. He wouldn't have been there if her brother hadn't been who he was.
Mhm.
Uh, let, let me say something real quick. Um, this is like a review podcast, and I shouldn't have to say this, but spoilers are coming. Like
Right.
it's a review. Like
You can't
I
not.
can't
Yeah.
can't review something without telling the story.
Right.
So I don't think I don't want to give away too much in me saying like answering specific questions or whatever, but I can't not talk about what's going on, like
Yeah.
specifics to the people.
Because
So
it will go into how we would rewrite it, right?
it yeah, it going out. So I feel like there was a bunch of things, like everything that went on, or every, like you said, all the times her brother popped up in her head was like weird times. And I know it's to further the storyline or to build the relationship between her and her brother, and at the end what he ended up doing for her.
Right.
but it was just weird. Like I gotta assume at certain points, if you're going through a tragedy or a situation, let's say a situation, or like
Yeah.
a tense situation, our brains are kind of crazy, like kind of weird. So I can see you flashing back to certain things that don't like maybe just to avoid the situation you're going through, whatever. I can see that, but it just felt like everything that was she was flashing back to with her brother was just there to further the storyline.
With the store. Yep. Yeah. I agree with that. And I think that's it made it a little if he wasn't a part of it, it just would
It wouldn't have made
it would have fizzled. It would
it
have fizzled
wouldn't have made
more.
any. It have fell off a cliff. If
Yeah.
he wasn't part of the story, like had no part in it, just was something she was thinking about at these times, story would have fell off a cliff. It just
Yeah.
would have
Yeah. I
all we
agree.
keep saying uh Goodreads reviews. I don't think I would want to read them. Like I just would have let them go.
Well, I know I did. I read some of the Goodreads reviews, and a lot of people love this book. And I think maybe I don't know how many other books that Martin's written, but
I think it
maybe
said
it
like 19. Or no, I
okay.
think it's 30, 31.
Okay. So I guess I mean if you're a lover of the author and you're used to, his writing, of course you would definitely, fall into that realm. This was the first book I've ever read by him. And I mean I don't want to say that it was horrible, but it could have been better in just different ways, right?
Mm.
Um, but I mean, hmm. I don't know. I don't know. So what do you think about I have a question. So what do you think about the in trying not to give away too many spoilers, what do you think the motivation was of the female police officer that was injured in the car? Because it
Without
kind
giving away spoilers.
of that she kind of got sucked in, but they didn't tell you how. And
Other than
then it
no,
was
go
over.
ahead.
So it's like,
Yeah, like a lot of the after you find out part is a little convoluted. It's just a lot of like I don't want to crap on the dudes, right? But it's like a lot of stuff like thrown at the wall, kind of, and you kind of got to make sense. It wasn't very clear, and you had to like make sense of it on your own. Like, why is she doing this? And then you go, well, was it because they had something on her? Like, because you just don't
yeah,
do stuff like that.
I didn't even
Like, you
think
don't
about that aspect of it. Yeah, that's
like
the observation.
the only motivations I would have thought she would have had. Like, she didn't hate her. She didn't hate dude her brother.
Right.
Like, she was there. They had to have something on her to make
And she
her
had visited the
do what she was doing.
hotel like
She was doing it.
frequently.
Like, that's
So
why she was there,
yeah,
trying to get letting Remy talk, just listening to her talk is the easiest way to get information from anybody. It's just to shut up,
yeah,
let them talk. And when she got that information, she used it against her. I mean, spoilers.
yeah. Yeah. So
But like I said, other than that, if there was motivation in the book,
mhm,
I it was too layered under other things for me to be like, okay, this is the definitive reason why she did this. It was just like, oh, she got caught up with the wrong people. They had something on her. She needed to help them, or something bad was gonna happen. Like that was the only. It's it tends to go like that, and like I said, it was too muddled. Like I shouldn't have to figure it out. Why you doing what you doing? That's the author's job. So
yeah, yeah,
it was weird.
I agree with that. Um, the the guest, the male guest,
Male guest.
super sketchy from the jump. Um,
But you
just
had to see that coming.
well, I don't know that I saw it coming in that aspect of it, but I definitely knew there was something going on. Um, and I wish it took too long. Like I feel like it didn't have to be so far into it
Right.
for him to reveal what, why he was around, why he was there. Because
If you
it's not harmful. It wasn't like, it was malicious. I mean,
right.
but I feel like what would have been the harm in him being upfront and honest from the jump, other than the fact of it dragged the storyline out a
Right.
little bit more.
Well, I totally agree with that because, like I said, you don't find out what's going on till 5.5 hours into the book, and sometime after that, when he's like, "Oh, I got a secret to tell you," and then he still doesn't tell her at that point. Like it was later on before he told her what was going on. So I knew I kind of had an idea what was going on from the beginning, just based off what he did with his phone. Like, and she saw that, and I don't
Yeah.
understand. Like, you saw that his phone was recording you. Like, what other reason do you think he would be recording you with his phone down?
Yeah, they kind of
Like,
like dropped it in there, but then left it alone for
yeah.
you to kind of forget about it for them to bring it back up later on.
So it made me think at that point, just me rewriting a story or writing a story for what was going on. It made me think that maybe neither one of these strangers meant anything. Like maybe the
Was him.
main antagonist was
The
him,
motive was him.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just another thing that I it sucked me into what I needed to try to not figure out, but what was going on in the book. It was just another reason for me to keep reading the book. So if that was the goal, he succeeded. I mean, with
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
because I wanted to know. Like I said, when we first started, there were so many different possibilities this book could have went. Like so many different outcomes, so many different ways to get from A to B to C, whatever. And because you don't know until you read the book, you, I, you try to figure out different avenues they can go.
Yeah.
So it
And there
was
was
just
a million
another
of them. There was a
right.
million.
So was it just another little alternative, like another little thing to get you to try to think about something else that could like it could go that way. So if that was the plan, it got me.
Yeah.
I mean, but like you said, it was so slow, and
Yeah.
because that had to be in the first hour, and you don't figure out what this dude's secret is. They don't tell you. I figured it out. They
You
don't
figured it
tell you
out.
what the secret is until 6.5, 7 hours in.
Yeah. And
Like
then you're
it's
on the
it.
downswing of the whole thing. And
Yeah,
I will say the climax of the book got it was it was low lows and high highs. So by the time it got to the high highs, it was, fight scene, right? And that was interesting. There was lots going on. I almost wanted to just outside of the book, I wanted that piece to be like a movie, like because
right,
I mean they were very descriptive in that piece of it, but it was almost to a fault. Like they were so descriptive that you also lost again who was who. I mean, at
right,
one point in time, you didn't know who was the male guest, who was the stranger one, who was the stranger two. I mean, even there was even spots that I wasn't even 100% sure where Remy was, and was she the female guest? So
right,
there was just a lot of everything got thrown up in the air, and then like collecting different pieces at random, and then we were flying off with those different pieces, and it was disjointed again.
right,
Um, but it did try to, even in the midst of all that chaos, there were still twists and turns that happened that I don't think needed to happen, but for the specific reason of her outcome,
Right.
which
Just
again,
furthers the story, right?
right.
It's
So,
just stuff happening to further the story.
hmm,
And
yeah,
it, like I said, it was so like disjointed. Like, oh, it was this, it was this, it was this, just to get it along. And
yeah,
I didn't understand. I'll be honest with you. Like after you found out who this the after you found what was going on, after you found out who was who, it fell off after that. Like
yeah.
I was
Everything else
like,
was insignificant for me. It was almost kind of like, did we need 8 hours for this? We could have wrapped this up in 5. It was wrapped up in 5, honestly. But again, but I feel like there was definitely places where a rewrite would have been better,
right,
even within the 8 hours. I don't know what would be taken out,
I
but I
didn't either.
think there would just be additional information that would have been more fulfilling within that time frame to just
Right.
carry the story to make it a little bit more interesting. So what are your thoughts on, what you would rewrite about it?
Was this? Wait, you were frozen. What did you say?
I said, what are your thoughts about rewriting? Because there's definitely spots where even though it was, you know, didn't go as great. And if we were to stop it at that 5.5, 6 hour mark, the story was
Right.
definitely over. I mean, literally, it could have been wrapped up in 30 minutes after the climax of the story. So, what, how would you have rewritten some of that filler to make it the complete 8 hours, but without sacrificing the story? Or to bring the storyline a little bit more full circle.
Oh, you keep breaking up at the end. But I think okay, my biggest issue, well, I shouldn't say biggest issue. An issue I had with the ending is after you know everything is going on, after the book essentially ends and you get into what essentially is an epilogue,
Mhm.
I didn't need any of that. Like
Yeah,
I didn't need any of the part where she's now a super spy. Like you put on a wig and an outfit and you can blend in with any. I didn't need any of that.
because
Like
she doesn't have to, though. That's the thing,
you,
is there was no need for her to have to do it because she
nobody
fell
cared.
within the she fell within the reins of how they were functioning anyway. So,
You decide. Like I would have ended it between her and the guy at the bar, right?
yeah.
I would have ended that whole thing when she said, "I hope to see you again sometime" or something. That should have been the ending line. Like
Yeah.
it should have ended right there. But the fact that she went all James Bond salt double O, I'm a spy now, so I got away,
Mhm.
and I hate that in stories where people get away. Like it's the David Baldacci book, The Winner,
Mhm.
where the lady they had her win the lottery, right? Oh, we specifically want you to win the lottery, right? All you got to do is not come back to America. Why do you come back to America?
Yeah.
Just to, you got away. You had your brother's gift, right?
Mhm.
You he took it from the bad people. You away. You came back just to give him to this dude's award show, and now you are wigged up, got your waiter suit on, come right up and talking to this guy, like
Yeah.
you talking to him, and he don't even think you important enough to recognize.
Right. And he
Right?
interfaced with you the entire time.
Blah blah. You're going back and
The
forth,
entire book. Right.
and then you slide on out,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Oh crap, was that her?
Yeah,
Who
that was
cares?"
weird. It was weird.
You could like you didn't. I know y'all didn't interact, but for that time you were there in the hotel. But you tell me you didn't recognize her voice? Like you nothing was clear, like nothing. resonated to like, hey, I know this shit. Like I know her.
Yeah.
It was nothing. I, you could have killed all of that.
Yeah.
She gone. She said, hey, I might see you again. I hope to see you again sometime. Ended it. Unless there was a sequel coming, I wouldn't have put that in this book.
Right.
That didn't make any sense.
Well,
Like,
I feel like it didn't even need to be. So I feel like, why was it like she was escaping, or because she wasn't really like she wasn't running. So nobody was really chasing her at that point. So why even make a big deal out of the whole situation, because nobody was going, you know, the gentleman at the bar wasn't going to tell anybody. So nobody really even knew that she was there in the first place. So why not bring, attention to yourself when there was no real attention on you in the first place? So that piece was very not necessary.
I
Um,
guess the only thing I'd say about that is if she felt like she needed to get away because she ended up killing the person, like she did kill her, she killed the person.
right.
Then she lied to the cops to get away because she told them she didn't care what happened to that dude that she stole the cop car. She was like, hey, he said go down there. And then he was like, oh, I'm about to get promoted.
Well,
Probably got
remember,
fired for that.
she assumed that identity. So again, nobody
Right.
knew nobody even knew that she was even there, or that anybody else was there. I
Right.
mean,
She
guy from
said,
the bar didn't say anything. So who's,
right. He got stabbed.
yeah.
It wasn't on her. Like she was like, hey, the dude, he got stabbed. Go get him help. She could have walked away.
Yeah, right there. I mean, nobody knew she was there. Nobody knew she was. It was so insignificant that it was just blown out of proportion. Like she could have literally just turned and walked away, because that's what she essentially did. But like you said, she went in the whole 007 for him, and it's like it wasn't necessary. I
It,
mean, it was kind of like, I don't know whether it was supposed to be the wow factor of it all, just to kind of slide into that whole award ceremony the way she did. But still, I mean, I think I would have felt better if they did interface in the end, because it would have just been a meeting afterwards and then ended there. I
right.
mean, because they could have had them interface again, because nobody else would have ever linked them together in a different world ever. So it
They
didn't
were
matter. They were in,
other
Scotland. Where was she going? Chile. So
yeah,
it didn't matter.
other than him writing her brother's story or him doing the podcast on her brother's
Right.
and the thing that was he was mixed up in.
Mm-hmm.
There was no connection between them two. Like they
None.
weren't romantically involved like at the hotel. There
Nope.
was no chemistry for real between them during any parts of the story. He
Right.
was just doing his job, she was doing her job, and they were surviving.
Yeah. And at one point in time, we thought that he was part of it. So yeah, who knows? Yeah.
I really, really didn't like that.
Yeah.
And I
I
guess
think.
the other part, like offhand that I really didn't like, and this is like totally going into spoilers, is when they said that the people in the bad organizations could use different identities or whatever. Like I got that. And when you find out what's going on between the missing female guest and then the second stranger or the other cop,
Yeah.
when you find out what's going on between them, it's like you didn't need to tell me when she's calling him. I'm basically giving away the story. When she's calling him, like looking for him, like where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Calling him by his name. Where you at? Where you at? It was no point for her to use her real name in
Ever.
one of them calls
Right.
because that only it was only there for like let me
I don't even think
I
that
gotta
that was even
rephrase.
her real name, because again, it just made you question, really, honestly, who was who in the first place. Because I
Right.
don't. I mean, and maybe that's the whole spin on the stranger part of it, because you really don't know who this person ever was in the first place because,
Right.
again, of the assumed identities.
But if you take it for what it is, like take it for what it's worth, and that second stranger is not Gaines. The first cop is Gaines. He's the cop. If the second stranger isn't the cop, and he's I forget what his name is, Cyril Dage, that guy, but you thought he was Foley the whole time. Like
Hmm.
once you knew he wasn't the cop, you just assumed he was Foley.
Right,
Like,
right.
okay. So when the lady is calling him, and they figured out that he's not Foley, she's calling him by his I forget what his name was. It
I
started with
don't
H.
remember his name because it was that insignificant. It wasn't significant enough
Right,
because it happened like a blurb, and then it's like, wait, what? And then they never mentioned it again.
right.
It was just more that female's interaction with everything else.
But when she was calling him, she kept calling him by the H, like
Okay.
just call him. Like we've already gone through. We've already blown your identity as being a cop. Like, okay, you this H person now. I gotta look it up. It's when she told him over the intercom who she was, like when she used her name, I was like, I didn't need that. Like I didn't. Like why, other than to fill in the audience who couldn't figure it out or had thoughts on other things,
Yeah.
I didn't need you to tell me that she was the type more than likely the real person
The
that they
real
were looking
person.
for. Like
It
when
was
she
justifying. It was justifying the pieces that got us where
right
we went, which wasn't
because
again significant enough to even mention.
but see it didn't make sense from a common sense like it didn't make sense from common sense. If you and I are talking on the phone, right, and I'm like Natty this, Natty, I wouldn't be like Natty is Brian. I'm assuming if we come having a conversation, right, and you used to me talking to you on the phone, that I
Right.
don't got to tell you who I am,
Right.
and
Because
you like, I'm like, where's Natty? Where's Natty? Natty, where you at? Natty, where you at? Natty, where you at? Natty, where you at?
but
Natty
I
is
called
Brian.
you or you called me, right?
Brian is Brian. Where you at? Like, you know who it is. If you were picking up, it
Yeah.
wouldn't be a problem. But if you're not picking up, I'm not telling you who I am.
Yeah. That
Other
was that
than
was the tell. Yeah.
that was the one where I was just like, I'm done.
We're done.
I'm done.
Well, by the
I'm
time you
done.
were done, it was again, you were
It
too
was
far
almost
gone.
over.
It
It
was
was
over.
almost
It
over. Yeah.
was
I
almost
was like,
over.
I I just did not understand that.
I think I mean, for me, I will say that in the midst of, struggling through this book, I think one of the things that did help was the narration. I
Oh,
think,
absolutely.
I think if it wasn't a great narrator narrating, I probably would have definitely hung it up way sooner. But I mean, I think that was, having that piece of it work, it helped a little bit,
Mhm.
because I think that, it wasn't too fast, it wasn't too slow. I mean, you could definitely understand the differences of the characters within the narration. That
Right.
was, I mean, she killed it. I mean, she was very strong from a narration point of view. But yeah, I mean, I don't even know. I'd be interested to know, what even her thoughts of it would have been, as she was narrating, because it went back and forth through a lot of different things. Um, I think one of the other things that I really wish they would have did was gave me more perspective from Cameron. They tried to give the flashbacks, but they kept going back into that whole, astrology piece of it. And I feel like why? That was the first question. Why? Um,
Mhm.
is that, was that a play on, baby brother being the dreamer of what he could have been had he not got wrapped up in this stuff? because they touched on it way too much. It always went back to the stars, the stars, the stars, and it was just
Right.
it was almost awkward, to where I really wish they would have just gave his perspective, almost kind of, you know how when they go into the storyline and, as they're telling, Remy's side of it, them flashing back and pulling in Cameron's side of it, of how he's going through this, this organized or organization thing that he's doing, to where he would, have that leading up to, the tragedy, right?
Right.
Happen, because I feel like if they would have added that piece in it, I think that possibly could have pulled it a little bit more together for me, because it wouldn't have been disconnected in a sense of trying to constantly fit those little flashbacks in there. Just,
Right.
ran the stories parallel from Remy's perspective and Cameron's perspective. And then I think if they maybe have done that, it would have been better. Better with even it being 8 hours if they were just to throw his side of it in there, because it doesn't tell how he got the things to where, where she was essentially going.
Right.
He They don't tell you that piece of it. So it's like there was so many opportunities for them to, pull in the pieces that did matter versus the ones that just led you into Crazyville.
Right. I feel like his story, like all of his story, his what he was doing, his dreams or whatever, they literally just were there to be her dream at the end. Like
Oh, that's a good perspective. Yeah.
but it's like it's like any other story where somebody is like, hey, I know it's me and you. Well, I got this big dream to build a restaurant. I want to make a restaurant. This is my big dream. And then for some reason they don't, like they die or something. And then the second person is like, oh well, I gotta build this restaurant
Fulfill the dream.
for and that's what it ended up being. It was like her going to Chile wasn't her dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hold on.
You want a piece of this garlic bread? Yeah. I read it. Yeah.
All right. Should have paused that. Uh, um, I just feel like what was her what were her aspirations like
That
in
was one
life?
of my notes too. That was,
It was nothing. Like she was a
she was ambitious,
teacher,
but ambitious towards his dream and not hers.
right? She was a teacher. I
Yes.
think it was a teacher, right? She
Yeah.
was a teacher.
But she
She stopped
left there to,
teaching
yeah,
to
to be
go closer to
closer.
the jail,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay. So then she didn't ever decide like I'm going back to teaching. Like
Yeah.
my brother's gone. Like I don't need to be here anymore. Why was she still at the hotel? Like he had been gone a year. She was still there. And then she's
Yeah.
like, well, my dream, now that my brother's gone, is not to go back to teaching, is to go down to Chile where he wanted to. Like,
Yeah.
where were her aspirations?
Yep, that was one of my notes here. Does that, one, it was, why was Cameron so, out of sync with the family? Like, from the teenager, was he just, a teenager being a teenager, rebelling, blah, blah, blah? Because they didn't touch on that family piece of it a little bit, but
Nah,
it was more, they just kind of, he's in it. He's in the thick of it. Now he's in prison. And you missed all of the leading up to, and it's like, what happened? They talked about like the parents. So I really wanted to know, like, well, where are the parents now? Because they dropped it in there,
it's
but they never picked it back up again. So there were just so many questions that I had at the end, where it's like, okay, you went here, but you left your parents are in another place. Like she did. I do recall she had like a phone call from her mom, I think,
mm,
at some point, and just saying that she was okay. But then it's like, but where did they think she was even before she was in Chile? So it was just weird.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't know. But I
it
just
was like it was like he like his whole character was there to further her story. They said like when he was younger, oh, like he got in trouble in school. Like it was so condensed. Like his whole background was just like in a couple sentences. Essentially, it was just like, oh, he got in trouble in school. He couldn't go back. He decided I'm not going back after that. Like, I mean, that's a rash decision for a teenager. Like, yo, I'm in trouble once. They don't have faith in me. Forget school. I go do something else, right? I
yeah,
always cared about the stars. Why not go into astronomy? No,
yeah.
because I'm too busy making this money doing these, you know, illegal things, right?
But then they never even touched on the illegal things to get him. We knew that he was doing them. We knew that he was doing above and beyond
Right,
what was going on. But then I really wanted to know what was it that he was doing. Like, I
right.
mean, in my mind, it was like he what skimming off the top. I
He
don't
had to,
know. And then
he had to be
how was he able to get this gift where even where she was able to receive it, pick it up? I mean,
right,
I mean, because obviously he never, well, he did put it there, but I mean, at some point he couldn't have put it all there at once. So
right.
it was, that part was that kind of fell off, and maybe the author just thought that we wouldn't be thinking about it other than, oh, she got the gift and it is what it is, and now she's living this life. But
Plus, for him to do that, you got to figure that he do like he wasn't gonna survive it. Like he set her up, knowing he wasn't gonna never touch his money, other
right,
than it being in there. Like other than him putting it in there for her, despite whatever relationship they had. Like, and like you said, it was motherly. You go from siblings and to a point to where if you the older sibling, because I think it said they were like 7, 8 years apart,
yeah,
you go from being siblings and then from a sibling who's hardly there to a sibling who's got to come back because your parents then basically gave up on you. Like
yeah,
we
and
didn't
she
have
was
to know.
visiting like weekly, and yeah,
So now you the mom. Your relationship is mother son, man.
yeah.
So it seemed like all of this stuff that happened because he hadn't known he was done. Like everything happened was literally just to further her storyline.
I just even wanted to know the how and the why and the details of in the prison. I wanted to know the things that the author was not giving me.
And and when you say like, oh, if it could end in 5.5 hours, what would I put in the 8 hours? A little more of that, and a
Yeah,
little less James Bond stuff, like just a little less, because I
yeah.
didn't need any.
More
But
of the tying in. Yeah.
I need I need to actually care about her brother.
Yeah. Because I mean, he was the storyline. He was the main, to me, he was the main character, but the most insignificant piece that was played
Right.
in.
Every everything that happened because of him.
Right. But we knew very little about him, his background, other than minor details that,
He did bad stuff.
yeah,
That's all you knew.
that's it. And
And he
didn't
likes
even go
stars.
into what the bad stuff was. So,
Other than the time where he had her come pick him up, and they were like hiding from the car that was going past. The car was chasing them, I'm assuming. And that never stopped. There was nothing else. There was nothing else to it. What was
yeah,
he doing? Like, why was he running? I don't know.
yeah,
It
I
should have
don't
been more of that, a little less James Bond. I'm gonna keep harping back
know.
on
That's
James,
James Bond.
but but I
So, so
can't stress how much I hated it.
what do you say out of 5 stars? What do you give it? Or are we giving half stars?
Let's be better than Goodreads. So yeah, we can do half.
Okay.
Stars got a point. I don't want to be like point, like 5 or like I don't want to do that. Like a fifth of a star.
Okay.
So if we just went half stars,
Okay.
the first 5.5 hours, or to the point where you find out who everybody is, or you find out between the two strangers who was who.
Mm-hmm.
Then the avalanche happened. Up until that point, I was cool. Like, but it's always that thing to where if you make a lot about a certain point, like if you make a lot about a certain aspect, the whole point of the book for me was trying to figure out the strangers parts. Who was who? Who was who?
Right.
Then after you figured it out, which I probably would have just made that the whole book.
Yeah.
I if that's my selling point, who is who? Which one is telling the truth? I'd have just made it 8 hours.
Yeah.
But to me, because that was the selling point for me, and it ended after 5.5 hours, nothing after that it held me. Nothing after that held me like those first 5.5 hours. So if I was judging the book, I'd be biased on the first 5.5 hours because that was the part I enjoyed. Everything after
Okay.
that was just like an ending. It just, and like I said, the whole disguising yourself to be just to show up to a dude who didn't even care enough about you to recognize you standing next to him and having a conversation. I did like I don't want to say that ruined the book for me because it was already declining, but it made me hate the ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I get that.
so out of 5, with half stars included, I'd probably say about a 2.5. Because the first half, the first 5.5 hours, I was like,
I do a
even
solid
though
4. Yeah.
even though it was like it was stretched out and kind of long, and you could have actually condensed some of that, I was intrigued. Like I was invested in the first 5.5.
Yeah.
But after the dude gets killed and the avalanche happened, I was like, I I
I'm done.
I, I didn't really care after that,
Okay.
especially when you find out why. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. So I agree with maybe the first, you know, 5.5 hours. I'd say a strong solid 4. But after that, it definitely for me kind of knocked it right down to a 2.5. And that's hard. I mean, that's one of those, again, you're at a high and you just took a nosedive to
right,
just kind of make it work. And yeah, I think I guess if I mean final, I would probably give it about a 2.5. If we would have stopped at 5.5, 6 hours, yeah, I would have went a solid 4. I would have honestly went a solid 5 if they took the whole brother piece of it completely out and just made it about these strangers.
oh yeah,
Because
definitely.
then it was then they can keep the James Bond stuff in there because
I go there.
no James Bond stuff. But I mean it just made it work if they took out all of that flashing back and all of the even the prison stuff. It taking all that out and just focusing on the accident, the hotel in the middle of the woods. If they would have just kept it that and honestly stripped it bare bones to just focusing on that, he would have nailed it.
I
Like,
I agree. I don't know if I would have given it a 5, but it would have been way higher than would have given it. Like
okay,
you had totally eliminate all the brother stuff.
yeah.
Like and like you said, it's
And
literally
just
had it
had her
about
be the hotel
her
clerk.
trying to figure out what was going on between them two.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, would we even have the piece of, with the male guest? Actually, honestly, you could have even did a twist on that too. I mean, he could have still been doing something that had to do with these strangers.
With the stranger, right?
But yeah, if you would have, yeah, and she could have just been a random hotel clerk stuck there in the middle of the night just because somebody's got to work there. So
Right.
yeah, could have nailed it with that, and I would have been happy with that. I wouldn't have felt like it was a total waste. I mean, it's always hard coming away from some of these books and being like, gosh, you'll never get this time back. Moving on to the next book quickly so you can not have that, not have to keep it there. But I will say this, because, from the time that we read this book to us recording this now, it wasn't as significant of a book to me that, it was like, oh, I'm so anxious to get into this book. I mean, it was almost kind of painful even rewriting notes and just trying to recall and go back to, everything that happened that you did like, that you didn't like, because it was just too much. Like it was too much and not enough to make me excited about.
Right. Or something you already read.
Yeah.
Right.
But
like,
I mean, it's not the worst that I've ever read, but
it's not the worst we've ever read.
No. Yeah, it's not the worst that we've ever read, but I will say it might be in the top 10. And that's we've read lots of books, and
Lots of bad books.
Yeah. This is probably one in my top 10 of least favorite.
I'm gonna need you to look at your Goodreads review then.
I probably liked it back then.
You probably did.
Yeah. And I also feel like it depends on when we're reading these books, it also depends on where we are in our own moods as to, what our thought process is with some of these. I know I can get, if I've had a long week, I tend to expect a book to kind of fire exactly the way I want it to fire. And if it doesn't, I get turned off really fast. And maybe this book caught me in a bad space. But again, even recalling, there was just too many pieces I would have rewrote, and just to make it just a little bit better.
Right.
But
if it was going to be, if you were going to make, it's an 8-hour book. If you had taken out all of the brother stuff, because I feel like all of the brother stuff was just there to be her motivations to do whatever.
Yeah.
And it literally, you didn't need any of it. Like you said,
I don't even know that I wouldn't even say all of the brother stuff. If you put it all together, I don't even think it would have been an hour of that book.
Probably not. I don't think so.
Maybe, if you put it all together, it'd be probably even less than 45 minutes. But it was how it was sprinkled in there that just made it weird.
Right. If you had taken out all of that and, like you said, just made it about the actual hotel. Two cops say it's not an accident because, well, the accident isn't involving like a prisoner transport, right? It's just an accident because it's bad weather. But one of the cops is there maybe for her, maybe for the female guest, maybe for the guy guest. But it's only involved between those 5 people. Yeah. And you have to guess, or you're waiting to figure out what's going on between those 5 people. I think it would have been a better book, because I would have been motivated to care about what was going on. Like, I wasn't, after the cop got shot and the avalanche happened, I just didn't care anymore. I was like, now I know who, now I know who is who.
Yeah.
The first 5.5 hours, I struggled and debated and was
You really had a fight
confused.
with yourself.
Right, right.
Right when
I'm
you
like,
thought you knew, you didn't.
it didn't because something would happen to be like, that's kind of suspicious, right? Maybe the other dude is telling the truth. And then he'd do something that was kind of off. He'd be like, well, maybe the first guy was telling the truth. I went through that for 5.5 hours.
And I think it also it happened that way because there was they did the author did not make a huge point to make these strangers different because
Not
for it was extremely difficult to follow because they were calling them the same thing.
right,
So it's in your mind you had to really focus on their mannerisms of how of how they acted. Then you had to also focus on how she was narrating it to kind of capture the difference of people. And
right.
you really had to concentrate probably a little bit harder than you should have to, but it did kind of pull you in. But then once it got you there, it should
It
have
was
just been
over.
over.
It was
Like,
done.
yeah, just it should have just kept you there and let you go. But by keeping on going, it just kind of ruined it.
It was it was like after you found out who was who, the rest of the story was trying to implement why the brother was any part of the story. Like, why? What did this brother have to do with the story to get it to the end of the book? Like, that was the rest of the book. She killed the dude, the first cop, right? The rest of the story was them tying up why those people were here, why the brother did what he did, why they were after the brother, why she got away, or what her motive, how she got away.
Right.
Like everything, the rest of the story was about the brother, except the brother was dead. Like he didn't have a physical part to play in the rest of the book. He was just the rest of the book was about what he had done to get them to that point, and the back stuff, the bad stuff, the things he had done to set her up for the future. That was his role in the rest of the book. And I think I would have, if you I'm keeping the brother in the book, I'd have made him a more significant part of the book. Like instead of these snippets of flashbacks where you go, oh, he was a bad guy.
Yeah, I would have
Oh,
walked through
nobody
the
cared
whole
about him.
process to put him in prison and then what
Why
his
is he
life
bad?
was in prison. Yeah.
Why is he bad? Give me a scene of how he got killed in jail. Like
Yeah, because that never
like
even happened. That didn't happen. They just said it happened, and then Lady Cop confirmed that it happened. She didn't even tell us how it happened, and I was hoping that that even happened. It just didn't.
it was like we need to wrap this book up, and we're not going to answer all of the questions. Like just not. If it had been a 12-hour book, maybe they would have went into more details. But it's an 8-hour book, and you at that point 6 hours into the book, and you add an epilogue part that didn't even need to be there.
Yeah.
So we cramming a bunch of stuff in at the end, and we're going to omit some stuff. Like it's just stuff the reader might have cared about that is not getting put in the book. It's just not because you don't have the time for it. So like I said, everything that happened after the avalanche, it was just there to end the book. Like
Yeah.
it was just there to finish the book. We've already established who is who in terms of the cops. There was extra part where you figure out about the bad guys, right? That was in that last, I don't know, probably hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that, where you figure out everything after the avalanche, who the bad guy is, why. But there wasn't enough if you basing the rest of the book off of one character who's not even there, you should have either stretched the book out or got to it earlier.
Yeah.
And because you didn't, we talking about why didn't this happen? Why did this seem so condensed when you could have stretched this part out and shorten this part. So I don't know. And I think one of the bigger things I don't like is that her brother was only there. Well, her brother was there to it ended up to where his motivations became her motivation. She became like a puppet, essentially a puppet for his motivations. Like
Yeah.
she didn't want to go to Chile.
Yeah,
He
she was
wanted
still
to go
living
to
his
Chile
life when she was living his life already.
already. Like, so why why not make her a person? We said from the beginning she didn't feel like the main character. She
Yeah.
wasn't, because her character arc was based off of her brother's story.
Yeah.
When she ended up at the end, like if you take away her coming back for the awards thing, she was in Chile, right? That wasn't her goal.
Yeah.
That wasn't her aspirations. She was teaching, and she only quit teaching to be closer to the jail. She didn't say, "Man, I hate teaching." Like,
Right.
oh, I got this teaching degree. Now I hate teaching. I don't want to do that anymore. She just stopped teaching to be closer to the jail because she knew her parents weren't going to the jail. So she decided on herself, I need to be looking after my brother in jail. He ended up getting killed in jail. Like, what can you do?
Yeah.
So, and like I said, he had been dead for a year to that point. Why are you still in Scotland?
Yeah.
Other
And
than
what took her so long to even, well, we know what took her so long. Remember, it was the matter she had to be there before he had paid up where the stuff was up into a certain date. So that's
because she
where,
needed to be there for that date. I
yeah,
get
she
it.
needed to be there before that date. But she could have been there way
He didn't
before
need to
that
be in
date
Scotland.
because he was already gone.
He was
Um,
gone.
I don't, yeah, they didn't even talk about was she working through other details? No, it was just a big,
She was packing up.
she
When
was
you
packing up for a
when you
year.
opened the book up, she was packing up, had her stuff ready to go. She was gone, but she didn't have any motivation.
Well,
Like it
she
was
was
no
gone, but she wasn't really leaving anything behind. That's the part that I did. I mean, she wasn't leaving anything behind that would have warranted her staying there for that year at
right.
all. Like she could have
That's
immediately left
when he
right
died. She could have been
after
gone.
he
Right.
died. I
I
mean,
said I didn't understand. Like, why are you still in Scotland?
yeah.
He's
So,
gone.
do you think
So
you would do you think you would give it another book a try from him?
I mean, I give like I don't want to base me reading a second book off of me not liking the first book. I don't want to be that like that guy, but I wouldn't go into it with the same expectations. And I think that's the thing. You can go, hey, it's like the book we hate the most. I'm assuming we still hate this book the most, right? Like not this book, you know the book I'm talking about, right?
Yes, I
We
do know
hate
the
it,
book you're
right?
talking about.
But I read another book by that author, maybe, but I'm not going into it with the most positive, like I'm not mindset. I'm not like, oh, this one about to knock it out the park. This one about to bang right here. I'm
And
just like,
constantly have that same
eh,
feeling over
I
and over,
got
disappointment over and over and over.
I got this locked in right here, right? It's bad. Now, it might not be bad, but I've been hurt. This book hurt me. Like this last book, it hurt my heart to finish that book, right? Hurt my heart, and I finished it. I don't need no more heartbreak. Like why?
Yeah.
So would I read another person a book by that person? Probably, but I don't drink. Like I don't know. Like it seemed like a book you would need alcohol to finish. Or if you were reading another book, you need alcohol for the heartache that you would
If it
suffer.
started to go
I think
through how it was, yeah, yeah,
if it started like going off a cliff,
quick, yeah,
you know what? No, I won't even say that because I would be to the point with that person that if it started going off a cliff, I'd be like, I'm done. Like I'm not even finished. Especially if it was early.
yeah.
I'm just good. But I read another book by Martin Griffin, sure. Like because I liked the first 5.5 hours of this book.
That's fair.
I was I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I don't like being able to read a book and predict the plot or predict what's going to
How
happen.
it's
I
gonna
don't like
go.
that. I
Especially when
hate
you
that.
figure it out when you're in like hour one and then you've got 11 more hours to go and it doesn't pick up
And
and
it's
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 just stuff thrown in there.
and it's not just me. Like I say that because you and I are creative people, right? I'm not a person who figured like I could read a book and it's only going to go one way
Right.
because that's why would you read a book that you know going into this is only going one way? Why? Like, why would you read a book like that? I go into a book figuring I don't know what's going to happen. And that's the only way I read a book because I don't know what's going to happen. And I've got ideas because I'm creative. And I think, oh, this could go this way, this could go this way, it could go a bunch of different ways. But if I didn't go into a book like that, I wouldn't read a book. Like I wouldn't waste. I've never, like you said, how many times have you started a book and been like, I never get this time back?
Right.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
If I
Well,
don't
I
like it,
remember, I used to do it. I used to go
mhm,
through those books and it's something about getting through multi-hour books and not being fulfilled, not feeling like the book was worth your time and it just wasn't good or for whatever reason. But I mean, that's when you just have to start setting boundaries because you can't get that time back. And like you said, it's not that, you know, we're just out here trying to read bad books or our expectation of these books are, way up here. No, we want to be able to, be given that storyline to where we can follow it and enjoy the path that it's walking, but sometimes you just can't get there. And I mean, we try to go through our yearly, how many books do we want to get through in a year, those book challenges, and you can't get through those book challenges when you're knee deep in books that are not enjoyable. I mean, because I think if 90% of the books I read within my yearly quota are good. I'm not even going to say great. If they're good, I'll say it's all worthwhile.
right,
And if that 10% is just kind of like, I mean, I'll even say that 10% is kind of like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's still, as long as I've got a solid 90% that's good, I'm happy with that. But I can't keep going through the books that's just kind of making you feel some sort of way and not in a good way because and pretty fast. And sometimes I'll try to give the benefit of the doubt. Some of them I just can't get there and I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to force it where I used to try to just get through it to wait and see like okay, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. And then by the time you're there it's over and you're just kind of like
it didn't
ugh,
get better.
it didn't get better. And then now you're ready to throw, all the books in the trash and you never want to read another book by that author and I think, I feel like maybe I need to be better about going back and reading other books by those authors that, again, like you said, the expectation would be different or going into it with a different mindset just to kind of, steer and navigate those things. But yeah, I'm with you. I probably would read something else by Martin just because, like you said, the first piece of it sucked you in. You didn't know what was going on in a good way. And I loved that part of it. But it's just once it started on that downward spiral, it was kind of like you couldn't look away, but because I feel like I wanted something more to happen, and
Yeah,
it did make you stay, right? It made you stay because you thought something else was gonna happen, but it didn't.
it did.
So it just didn't. So yeah, I would read another. Um, so what do you think? I feel like for the first joint book of the year 2024, I think it wasn't terrible. And I will say, we will probably refer back to a specific one book that
I
you'll
bought it.
say that it's horrible. We don't like it. We will not read again. I feel like at some point we're probably going to have to talk about this book. It may be later on down the road. Again, I think it was another book that people loved, and we both were kind of waiting, like, I don't know. There was a lot of times where I was like, Brian, what are you thinking about this? And he was like, no. But yeah, I think at some point we will share with you what that book is, and who that author is, so you guys would have that understanding of what that inside speak is, of what we're comparing. He's got the back of it, because he bought it.
It was free. It was buy two get one free. It was the only one owner that I recognized, so I was like, I just snatch it up.
Might as well. Might as well. I mean, hey, there might be a coming time where you might get that bad boy autograph too. So
Hey,
hey, it is significant in a manner that we do still talk about it, and maybe, I mean, I don't know that that's what an author wants to have happen. Um, they'd like it to be talked about in a more positive way. It's just that, hey,
I don't know.
speaking about it is still acknowledging that it exists. So
Right.
maybe that's still good.
I think I could argue that,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I figured anything that could be bad or anything that's perceived as bad, like in people's opinions, some part of somebody has got to be like, hey, at least they talking about it. Like
Right.
it's not irrelevant.
Not for nothing. Yeah.
Like people are talking about. Now this is a New York Times bestseller. That's what it says on the cover, right?
Yeah.
New York Times bestseller, right? So
It was on
somebody
the
was like,
national book list.
right. So
I mean,
somebody is like, this
I
is
went
great.
into this book super, super, super excited.
Trap
Disappointed.
me into this one too.
But yeah, so I guess we'll figure out what we want to get into with the next book. I'll let you choose the next book. Because like you say, I usually trap you into books just from these national book lists, just because I feel like they're on that list for a reason, right? They're on that list because somebody's reading them to put them there. I wonder what it takes to be on the bestsellers list.
Oprah.
Did Oprah recommend that book?
I don't
I don't
know.
know. But yeah, I think, let's figure out, what's your next book
I
read.
already know.
Oh, you do.
It,
Okay.
it's a old. It's not a new book. We
Okay.
should be revisiting a book we already read, and I think this book has significance between you and I. So we should read. Uh, is it 7 Days in June?
7 Days in June. That was a good book. That was
We
a
need
really
to do
good
that
book.
one because
Yeah,
like I already got.
I would revisit that book multiple times. That was a really good book. Worthy of being on a bestsellers list.
Wow,
Absolutely.
but more worthy of being on the Read Write Books podcast, right?
Right, right.
Because when you do a podcast, you got to keep saying what it is, right? It's the Read
Yep.
Write Books podcast.
Yes. So hopefully, more to come. Super fun. I like this platform so far.
We just blah blah, like we just doing what we
We
would
just
normally
talk
do
like
over
we
the
normally
phone,
do.
right? Blah blah.
And also, let's say this. I know that because we don't always read the same books, but I always do, and I always do kind of go back and say, "Hey, Brian, I'm reading this book," and he'll say, "Well, what'd you think about it?" So we do this platform, just in general conversation, all the time. And not necessarily that he's ever going to read the books that I read, or I'm going to read the books that he read, but it's also just kind of just giving an outline of, what our individual thoughts are. Sometimes I think there's been a couple of times that we went back and read books after we've talked. just so we could go back and revisit the conversation again. So that we tend to do that a little bit too.
Theodore Boone, 2 thumbs up.
Oh my gosh, that series was fantastic.
Theodore Boone.
Theodore Boone.
Not just for kids.
Not just for kids
book.
at all.
It's a law book.
Law books are my jam. I love law books. Christian books. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
Though, will say, I did not. I don't say I didn't enjoy it. I didn't love the exchange. I just didn't.
Yikes.
And my thing, because you asked me, you were like, "Yo, would you recommend it?" Like, because you were starting, you were like, "Should I keep going?" I think my biggest issue with that, and we should probably say this for something else, but my biggest issue was to bring back like Mix McDeer from the firm, to bring back his character, right? Bring back his family. You could have totally used a totally different character and the story would have been the same. Like if you bring back a character that's been gone since the firm, so like 30 years, but he doesn't have any significant impact on the story other than it's a guy you knew from before.
No. Mm-hmm.
You could have he could have been Tom Jones or Sam Davis or something. Like he could have been anybody with the same kind of
the context.
Well, at the same level.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't know about him. He's just totally new. And the story would have played out the same, other than at the end where they try to get his wife involved. I kept thinking something was going to happen. And that again, that's on me. Like I kept thinking something was going to happen that would make this. I kind of feel like I'm in like an M. Night Shyamalan kind of guy. Not in terms of like his movies, but you know when you're watching his movie, there's a twist coming. Like every movie he does is set it up to the twist at the end. It's the flowers killing the people. It was the flowers killing the people that happened. It's the village where they are actually in the modern times, but you think is like 1700s or whatever. Like it's all these twists that you watch because you know it's coming. Like you know the twist is coming. And I kept thinking when I read this book that there was something coming. Like,
and it never
and it was just a straight story. It was like nonfiction.
Yeah.
If I wanted to, if I read a fiction book, I needed to not go like nonfiction. Like I'm expecting something to be weird or different or out of the ordinary. And it was a story that could have been ripped from the newspaper to where there was no twist. It was just this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I'm thinking, oh, well, this is the part where you find out something's going on. No, just this happened and it was over. And I was like, well, that was, I think it was 9 hours.
Yeah,
that was 9 hours of me thinking that something was going to happen that didn't end up happening.
Yeah.
So I could probably blame me, but I don't think it's my fault of thinking that a fiction book shouldn't go like a nonfiction book.
Yeah.
Something should be, it don't even have to be a twist, but it should be different.
Yeah.
And it just played out like it ripped from the head. It played out like a Law and Order episode, except they don't change anything. Because in Law and Order, or at least they used to, where they'd be like, this story that you're about to watch was ripped from the headlines. And they change names and they might change a couple minor details. So you're not like, oh, well, that's the blah, blah, blah case that they do it. It's a little different, but it's still a fiction based off of nonfiction. Like this book was a fiction book that could have been a nonfiction book. And I didn't care for it. But again, like I said, it's probably on me because I went in thinking it can't play straight. Like it's gotta be a twist. And there was no twist. So
Yeah.
when I said I wouldn't recommend it for you to keep reading it, when you said like you didn't think you were gonna didn't think you were gonna go with it, I was just like,
Yeah.
if you go into it like I went into it, you're gonna be mad at the end
Yeah, I
because
probably wouldn't have
nothing.
even made it, past the first couple hours. Yeah. Yeah. So
And I could like review it right now, but why? Like I said, other than somebody, other than you bringing back a character that had I don't think had been in a book since the firm. I think the firm came out like 91. 33 years later, you bring back the character, like I said, hadn't been in a book since 91 to have him play a role in which anybody, like any new person, any new character could have done that. I, I like the firm. I think on Goodreads, I think I gave it probably 5 stars.
yeah, that was
I
one of my
read the
favorites.
book, I watched the movie, thought they were both amazing. But like I said, when you bring back a character from a book that I thought was amazing because he played a role in it like that was different, and then bring him back to a new story to where anybody could have played that role, or
Mhm.
it's just I don't know. I'd have figured it been like a more original story for a recurring character or for a returning character. Like, oh, you know what happened at the end of the firm? This is the sequel. Blah blah blah. More crazy stuff ensues, right? But it wasn't. It was just like he was there. All right, like he just wasn't enough. So, and I love
Okay.
John Grisham. Like I don't tend to crap on his books. I'm not a good read reviewer. I've seen those, right? And that's the thing I should look up because I haven't seen. Everybody who craps on John Grisham's newer stuff on Goodreads tends to say, "Well, this isn't as good as the firm."
Well, it's not the firm. And
It's not the firm. The problem with this book is it's using people from the firm,
yeah, honestly,
not be the
do
firm.
you feel like it could have been the exchange of the firm if this book was first in lieu of the firm as the first book?
Mhm.
Could it have been on the same level? Would you have liked it more knowing that the firm didn't exist?
I don't. It's. I think it's hard to gauge that because I do know the firm exists, and the firm is it's such a high regards. I hold it in such high regards that it's kind of hard to just like Thanos it out of existence,
Yeah.
you know. Like, but I don't know. Like, honestly, if the exchange had come out in 1990, I don't think it would have been a movie. Like, I don't. Maybe because there are better kidnapping movies, and essentially, it's a kidnapping story. Well,
Yeah.
it's a ransom story
Ransom.
from a kidnapping. I saw Ransom. Like I saw Mel Gibson in the Ransom. I was like, okay, that's a kidnapping story. This is about a kidnapped lawyer. I'm pretty sure it's a better like it's movies about kidnapped lawyers
Yeah.
or something that if it had come out 30 years ago, I don't know. I probably would have watched it. I don't think they would have made this story because I think the main selling point of this story is returning characters. And I don't think they needed returning characters. Like I think it just would have been a story. But when you say, "Hey," and don't have a book, but I'm pretty sure on the back it says, "Hey, Mitch McDear from the firm is in this book." This is your selling point
Yeah. Because people are expecting that
because you know that character,
the parallels.
because
Yeah.
you saw the movie,
Mhm.
because you read the book, and you like, wow, he got into some stuff. Then, like, did you read that? Did you see how that ended? He got into some stuff. And this book not so much. Like he was running. Like if I start talking about him, all I'm gonna say is it's a story that could have been led by a new person, and it would
A
have
new
played out
captain.
exact same. Other than, and I'd say spoilers. Other than him telling everybody that he had kept some of the money that he had gotten, that he stolen from his firm, from the firm. Other than him using some of that money to pay the ransom for this lawyer who had gotten kidnapped, and his wife being involved to where they kind of coerced her into helping out the bad guys. I don't know too much, but other than his wife and him in those two aspects, you could have used anybody to do that stuff. He went back to Memphis at the beginning of the book, and you like, oh crap, like why would he go back to Memphis? Like that's where all the trouble was. He went back to Memphis because his firm was doing like pro bono charity cases, and there was a guy on death row in Memphis that they wanted him to go down and see if they could get him off because he was about to get executed. He's like, I'm not going back to Memphis. Like, I'm not doing it. His boss was like, you going back to Memphis. He went down to Memphis. When he got there, the dude had killed himself. So what was the point of him going down to Memphis? That was the end of his Memphis experience. Like he went back to New York and there was no mention of Memphis again. Like the whole first book was about when he got out of law school, all these firms was coordinating. They wanted Mitch McDear, blah, blah, blah. Memphis had to do something different because they weren't going to pull him from a big Chicago firm or a big New York firm. So Memphis was like, hey, we doing all this stuff. Have all this to come down to Memphis. He went down to Memphis. So the whole story of him and the firm is about him and this Memphis firm and how they overcharging people because that's the only way they got him. It's like Al Capone. Just having a conversation with somebody yesterday to where we're talking about doing taxes. And the whole story is people figure they rather go to TurboTax to do their taxes. I probably shouldn't say. I'm not sponsored yet. We're not sponsored. We're not monetized. I shouldn't be crapping on potential sponsors. But my point is, people go to TurboTax instead of coming to a tax professional because they figure I don't want to pay the tax professional like a fee for doing these taxes. I can go to TurboTax and get them done for free. I mean, I guess that's what they say on the ads. I don't know, but you don't want to pay somebody else to do them, so you go to TurboTax. So my whole thing was, that's fine, but when you get audited because you trying to claim Sally Sue's children down the street, like you trying to claim them, and you get audited, and then you go to jail, that's how they got Al Capone. They didn't get Al Capone for murdering people. They got him on tax evasion, right? So my whole thing is that's what he was doing in the front. They was overbooking, blah, 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 blah. Long story short. Other than that, him going back to Memphis for a case that he didn't even actually get because the dude killed himself in jail. There was no reason to use Mitch McDare in the story. Like you could have used Bobby Jones' new Grisham character
Right.
to tell the whole story, but you didn't. You relying on people's nostalgia. Man, I read the firm 30 years ago. I know
No
how it
pulling in
ended,
that excitement of what it could have been.
what it
Yeah.
could have been, and it didn't play exciting. It played like a newspaper article.
It was the selling piece.
Definitely. I
That's what
wouldn't
it
have read
was.
it.
Yeah, it was
Well,
the selling
I can't
piece.
say that. I would have read it because of John Grisham, but I wouldn't have had the same excitement for it. I had the
Okay.
excitement for it because it seemed like it could potentially have been a sequel to the firm. I I don't know what the back of the book said, but it implied that it was like, oh, what is Mitch McDear's next adventure. Like, it's one of them things like, hey, what is he doing next? You saw how this one ended, and when he was gone from, we didn't write anything about him for 30 years,
Right.
but I got a new book. He's in it. I got to see what's going on. It played like a newspaper article. Like, there was nothing in it that where I was like, wow, like, twist. Wow. It was just like, oh,
Yeah.
it's 70 degrees outside. And, and it's gonna rain tomorrow. Like, literally, that's the excitement I got. I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna stop reading Griffin. I didn't enjoy that. I didn't
Disappointed.
enjoy because it kind of felt like they set me up. They did. It was like I said, he not been in a book since The Firm. I don't think. Not that I can recall. You bring back a returning character and you plaster that all over the book. Mitch McDear's returning. Did you see The Firm? Did you read The Firm? Daddy, did you read The Firm? Because if you
Yeah.
read The Firm, you gotta read this.
Yeah. Well, I would, because that's where the character is significant. So it would assume to be a sequel, which obviously it's not.
It, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it a sequel. But there was nothing exciting about it to me. It was just a story.
Yeah.
It didn't, and I, like I say, the Goodreads people will be like, nothing's as good as The Firm. Well, I didn't expect it to be as good as The Firm, but I kind of expected it to play like The Firm, like,
Yeah.
and it didn't. And I was like,
Yeah.
what's next? What's next?
Not this. Not this.
So I won't stop reading Griffin. I never stop reading Griffin. Like I said, you, I love law books. Like, I do, because I don't feel like I'm just being entertained. I feel like I'm learning stuff about the law. I wasn't entertained in this book. I learned some stuff about the law, but I wasn't entertained.
Right.
And
Well, you
I
could have
think
got that from the Theodore Boone books. So
I,
probably way more. Way
Theodore
more.
Boone, yeah. So I guess if I'm crapping on one book by John
No, we
Grisham,
gotta save the Theodore Boones
no,
because
I'm not. No, I'm not going. I'm not going. I just gonna say if I'm crapping on one book, I got to give like major props to the Theodore Boone series. Like, I love that, and I didn't think I could get you to read them, but I read them and I was like, okay, and then I was like, and they're not long. Like, that's the thing. I was
they're not
reading them
long.
on shift,
And then once you
so
read one and you felt the need and urgency to want to read the
right,
others.
you
And
had to,
that's where you want these books to just kind of keep pulling, 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 pulling. And it was easy pulls. It wasn't even like, oh man, I'm gonna, dive into this next book after, going from this one. I mean, to have the character be first so young, and yeah, we won't go into the whole big details of it, but yes, I mean, that series alone is for young and old. I mean, it phenomenal.
I think what it did for me, like, honestly, is it played on my nostalgia for me being a kid and reading the Encyclopedia Brown books.
Yep.
Like, when I was a kid, you couldn't keep me away from the Encyclopedia Brown books. And like, even when we first met, and you were like, "Oh, who are you? What's your name? Nickname?" It's Encyclopedia Bryant, right? Just because it was so much of a connection between me and those books. It's the reason I read now is because I started Encyclopedia Brown. I needed to know he lived in Idaville. I don't know what state that's in. It's like The Simpsons in Springfield.
Right.
Where is the Idaville, right? I don't know. It's got to be somewhere by the coast because they having crabs and lobsters and stuff. But I don't know. Like, it's one of them things. I got hooked from a young age
Yeah.
on reading those books, and I think there are 20 of them, 20, 22, something. And I've been looking to see like, should I get them digitally? Should I like try to find paper book copies? Or
Yeah, find the collector's
should I try to
edition.
find them like so I can have something tangible to hold? Do
Mhm.
I just need them on like on my phone? Because a lot of books that we read like earlier, when I was stealing the PDFs for them and like sending them to you. So
Mhm.
if you wanted to go back and read them, you like just go to the PDF. Do I need it in a PDF? I don't know. But
Yeah,
those books are the reason I read now. So I hold them in high
high regard.
esteem. Like high, like those are, and I don't want to say like the peak, but they're the reason that I read now is because when I was a kid, that's what got me hooked on reading.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out why Bugs Meany stole or how Bugs Meany lied when he stole somebody's bike.
Mhm.
Pinky, I forget the last dude's name. How he stole his bike. I gotta figure out what he said when he was talking encyclopedia that gave him away.
Yeah.
That's why I like law. Like I like law books. So like Grisham, Donald Sobel, just because, like I said, I started with Encyclopedia Brown.
Yeah.
It's the reason I read whatever I just read, what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Martin Griffin, you should be thanking Encyclopedia Brown. All right.
And on that note,
On that note, we conclude the Read Write Books podcast, episode 1, the premiere episode. That's redundant. Had a good time. I'd like to thank
yeah,
my co-host, my partner,
same.
Natasha K, for putting up with me because I'm not a talker. Like
What?
I'm not a talker.
Unless it's about books. I mean, that's one of those things.
I don't even talk
So.
about books either. I'm talking because I'm talking to you. That's why. But
But yeah,
to the next one.
till the next one.
You gotta have some kind of sign off.
I don't have a sign off. We'll have to definitely come up
That's
with
a
one,
sign off.
and that's the sign off.
We come up with a sign. Hey, check out my shirt.
Okay.
My nerves.
Right.
Wait, I could camera. See that?
Yep.
We write everything.
We right. Yep. All right. Till next time.
All right. Next time. To the next book. Pray that it's not. I'm not cursing. Pray that it's not crap.
Right. All right.
Because I don't want to see. I don't. There's a premise to us doing this podcast. There's a premise. We read the books. We figure there's a part we could do better. We write, read, write, rewrite, read, write, rewrite, rewrite. Right. So I don't want to get into a habit, or yeah, I don't want to get into a habit of doing an episode where we just crap on a book. Like
Right.
that's you can
That's
do
never
that.
the goal. That's not the
It's
goal.
not because even the crappiest books, I got to figure is something in it that either was good enough to keep me reading it or was good. Something was good about it. Somebody liked it, even if I didn't. Somebody like this.
Right.
It's New York Times bestseller. Somebody was like, I like this. I didn't care for it. This book, not this book. This book right here. Somebody cared for it. So I don't want to be like, let's do a podcast where we just crap on books. First of all, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help
Yeah.
anybody. It doesn't promote reading or literacy. Like I don't want to be like, hey, all books are crap because I said this book is crap. Don't read. Who does that?
Right.
What I like is not necessarily what you would like, or you, or whoever's watching this. So I'm not saying don't read, and I don't want to get to where it feels like I'm bashing books and people stop reading because of me. Like I'm just one person. I'm one opinion. Natty's another opinion. We got two opinions. Opinions is like buttholes. Like everybody got them.
Yeah. And
And
sometimes
most
you
of the
will
time they
see
stink.
that the two of us sometimes don't agree with how, how books how we read certain books. There's books that I absolutely loved, and there's absolutely books that he's like, it was painful. So
A slog. A slog trying to get through something. It's like running
so
through quicksand.
we will have those too, and that's, I mean, like Brian said, it does, it's never the goal to be speaking negative about a book. These are our opinions of, what we're reading and our thoughts behind them. And hopefully, you take kind of, what we're saying and just use it as, you know, a resource, of, how, what our thoughts were. And then once you read that book, you'll have your own opinion and see how it meshes in, and they can be conversation pieces. And I think that's, a lot to do. People have conversations about these books because, again, I think for the most part, that might be part of the author's goals, is to just have people talking about it, good, bad, or indifferent, right? Talking about it is talking about it. So let's keep talking about it.
Yeah, because like you said, I think the major thing you just said right there is I got opinion, you got opinion. But the major thing I think I want to get out, and I think you probably want to get out too, is that people should just read the book.
Yeah.
There's
What's
two
your thoughts
opinions
on
right
the
here.
book? Right. What
Exactly.
you think?
Leave them in the comments.
Yeah.
Subscribe and like. Leave them in the comments. I
Yeah.
don't know. This is YouTube yet, but
Yeah, I think that's going to be definitely, the avenue is, what are your thoughts on these books that we're talking about? And because, again, you're giving us a different perspective. We'll definitely go back and be like, never thought about it that way. And again, these are good conversation pieces that, I love to have. I know Brian likes to have them too. So, I mean, yeah, definitely let us know what your thoughts are of these books that we're talking about. And let your creative minds go too, and see where they go. And just, again, leave yourself open to be creative and not be afraid to say, I like this, but it would have came together a little bit better in this way. Again, it doesn't say that it was right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just, we all pull things differently. And we all, pull them to different places. Um, sometimes it's a warm and fuzzy ending, sometimes it's not. But I mean, how creative can you go with some of these references to the books and things like that? So that's what we're really looking for, is, what's working, what's not working. Just have a little fun with it also, but also just giving, different perspectives across the board.
absolutely.
So with that,
That being said, I'm gone. Bye bye.
bye
I don't
guys.
know. Something. We come up with something.
We'll come up with an ending.
Yeah.
All
Just
right.
remember, this is the first episode. It's number one.
Number one.
It's probably gonna be another two. Number two. It's gonna be two. It's gonna be two.
All right. Till next time.
Next time, hey, read. Not you, Natty. Go read. Go read a book. Enlighten yourself. And entertain yourself.
And if you don't have time to sit down and physically read,
Listen to a book.
listen
What's
to
the
it.
difference? Does it matter if it's paper or MP3? Like, does it matter? You're getting the same information. And we all don't have time to flip through pages. Like, but as long as you get in the book, it's a win. Read. Legit day. All right.